Morning and good afternoon to those of you that are on the East Coast. I'm Rick Erickson. I'm Agosto's Chief Cloud Strategist, and I'll be taking us through today's webinar titled Accelerating Cloud Transformation, Trends, Predictions, and Case Studies. For those of you that don't know Agosto, I'll give you a quick summary of who we are. I really want to focus more on the time we're going to have with our panelists today, both Dave Bartoletti, Vice President, Principal Analyst at Forrester, and Mr. Nathan Clevenger, Director Software R&D at Zebra Technologies. So I'm excited to start off 2019 with the first in a series of webinars we'll be doing this year. For those of you that are interested in continuing to learn more about some of the trends, some of the predictions, and also workspace opportunities that we have in cloud platforms, please continue to attend our webinar series and feel free to give us feedback on different events that you're interested in hearing more about. Today we're going to have a kind of a two-pronged session. We're going to cover both some of the trends, some of the historical trends we've seen in public cloud, some of the predictions that we've seen, some discussion about what we see as starting points for cloud adoption. And then we're going to pivot towards a discussion with Nathan, who will take us through kind of Zebra's early journey and the things that they're thinking about as they're moving additional workloads and services and building products on cloud platforms. And then we'll spend some time with a very quick panel discussion, which I'd like any of you to please feel free to add questions to the Q&A section. So up in the panel of Zoom, you can see that there's a Q&A box that you can click, and feel free to ask questions along the way, and I'll do my best to sort those out at the end. And if there's any questions, we'll have one of our producers helping with sorting out any questions that you might have, getting access to that panel discussion. So, well, thank you again for joining. Let me just go ahead and switch to our additional slide here, and then I'm going to take us through just quickly an introduction to Agosto. So first of all, for those of you who don't know us, Agosto is a Tier 1 premier partner. We have specializations in product development, infrastructure adoption, analytics, machine learning, and collaboration, which are all of Google's Cloud's kind of core practice areas. We also support leadership and innovators who want to implement cloud technologies to help them realize their own strategic vision, their company's strategic vision. And what makes us really unique is our combination of executive level consulting expertise combined with kind of top talent in both the infrastructure and developer space. We do have, as I mentioned, practice areas across each of Google's core enterprise practices. We focus pretty exclusively on technologies that are both focused on Google Cloud Platform, but also adjacent and connected technology partners that are supportive of Google's cloud. And we work with a combination of very large enterprise and mid-sized enterprises to help them on their entire journey from early innovation cycles and understanding how they're going to begin their journey into the cloud to very pointed product development solutions, modernization strategies, and support. And at the end of today's deck, I'll go ahead and highlight for you a few different places where if you're interested in getting involved and working with us as a partner, how you can do that. All right, so I'd like to really pivot quickly here to the time we're going to spend with Dave. Just a little bit of additional background about Dave. He's a VP Principal Analyst over at Forrester. He's developed, delivered, supported, and marketed game-changing technologies for more than 25 years as a software executive at several high-profile technology and financial services leaders. And he was at the forefront of both middleware, web, virtualization, automation, and cloud computing tech disruptions as both a vendor and a consumer. Dave's got a wealth of experience. I'm very excited to have him here and talk to us about where he sees the future of cloud compute and how some of the trends that he's been witnessing and analyzing are going to impact how we as enterprises adopt cloud platforms. So Dave, I'll let you take it away.
Thanks very much, Rick, and thanks to everyone for joining today. I'm excited to talk to you. And as Rick said, I've been at this for probably close to 30 years now, and it's always been about speed, right? Whether I was digitizing Wall Street in the 90s or building virtualization management tools 10 years ago. But more than ever before, what my clients today are really doing is laying down the digital application platforms and the development platforms that are going to power their businesses for the next 10 years. So really 2019 we see as the enterprise cloud go time. It's time to start using cloud to power our next generation of core business applications, everything that touches our clients, but also everything we use in the back office to run the business. So next slide. I'd like to start with the big picture, right? Our research into cloud transformation at Forrester really shows that the fastest digital businesses are creating cloud-based ecosystems centered on their customers, and that last clause is the important part. We're breaking down these linear value chains where we push data downstream to a series of applications through business processes and finally including customers way at the end. Right? We spent the last 20 years incrementally updating our apps and pushing data linearly down. With cloud infrastructure, what we're doing is breaking up those linear processes, right? Creating smaller and smaller services and connecting them over high-speed networks with API connectivity using distributed cloud platforms to tear down these monolithic apps and turn them into collections of microservices, connecting all of them back together, but most importantly, connecting the customer into business process and into applications faster, right? Smaller pieces, smaller apps, connected and reconnected on demand. And what that lets us do in turn is start rethinking business processes. That's really the holy grail. Anyone can build a new website. Anyone can build a new mobile app now, but can we really change the business processes behind those apps? And a good way to think about this is if you break up monolithic and linear business processes into smaller services that you connect through rich APIs and where the services are portable across cloud platforms, you can start to rewire your business processes the same way that we're rewiring code. What it lets your business do is become much more customer focused, and that means getting customers involved earlier in processes. Lets the business become more agile, right? You can change direction faster and stop doing things that aren't working, and really, in many ways, change the very nature of your business. Next slide. And that's really what's happening at Capital One, a customer that I've worked with for years, right? At Capital One, they've made it clear throughout the organization, not just in the IT department, but across the business, that it's not enough anymore to have a slightly better IT shop than other banks. They need to be viewed in the market as a great technology company. Capital One is not a bank anymore. They're a technology company that happens to sell credit cards. And this is working. Right? They have the #1 ranked mobile banking app 2 years in a row in Forrester's customer experience rankings. And what Rob does is spend a lot of time on the road every year, going to Capital One offices around the country and trying to reinforce this message of transformation. Right? We're going to transform people first. That means they're starting with culture. Then let's transform how we build technology. Then we can transform how we operate it, and then transform the Holy Grail, how we use data. What he likes to say too is that once you've made a significant investment in one of these platforms or tools or people skills around cloud, each new one starts to build on prior ones and get easier. So Rob says over and over again, 10 years from now, we're not going to be measured on whether or not we run a better IT department than another bank or another credit card company. We're going to be measured on the direct day-to-day customer experience of our clients. Next. So all this digital transformation, chopping up our business and reconnecting it, has really driven cloud adoption into hypergrowth. What I've charted here is adoption rates for the 3 major cloud deployment models: public, hosted private, and internal private, where the last 2 are dedicated, either run for you in someone else's data center or run yourself. If you look at the growth, it's been tremendous. This is the last, 6 years at this point, since 2019. Public cloud adoption has grown 5 times just since 2013. Some people are surprised when I show this, that back in 2013, only 13% of enterprises had any production workload in the public cloud. But that's true. There was a real long tail of experimentation before enterprise adoption took off. Private cloud started from a higher adoption rate because people very early on started to build, especially IaaS-focused private clouds. But that growth has continued as well, as we're sort of entering the next phase of what private clouds are now. They're not your uncle's private cloud. These are development platforms. They're not just virtual machine vending machines. And actually, the public cloud adoption number is now over 65% at the end of 2018. We just got the data back. So that's significant, about 6x growth in 6 years. This picture is really the hybrid cloud reality in a nutshell. Right? The reason that customers are embracing the concept of hybrid and multi-cloud is not because they love complexity and like to ask for pain. They're doing it because no single cloud platform is going to have everything you need. And that's really okay. You don't need to cut yourself off from innovation because you're not ready, for example, to move a particular sensitive database to public cloud. You don't have to. Right? In the last 3 years, the number of public cloud services that are now available in some form on premises, the explosion in high-speed direct connect connectivity options, either over the public internet or direct connections to the cloud platforms, and cross-cloud development platforms has really exploded. Right? Don't think of cloud anymore as a place to get cheaper infrastructure. Really don't even think of it as a place. Right? It's now shorthand for how we use tools and services to compose better applications, wherever we build them and wherever we run them. And actually, 80% of companies already tell us that their cloud strategy is hybrid. Right? That means they're going to connect all 3 types of these deployment models at some point and use multiple public clouds. The important thing to remember as you plan your 2019 cloud adoption strategies is to be hybrid by design. I mean, don't let hybrid happen to you. And we have a long string of research at Forrest about trying to help people be very conscious and pragmatic and directed about how they adopt multiple clouds. Next slide. The other development whoops, did we skip one? Or maybe, we took one out. Excellent. So with all that cloud transformation going on, really, we're still only at the beginning in the enterprise. Right? If we look at application portfolios, we're nowhere near that 65% adoption rate. We're really somewhere between 15 and 20% of enterprise apps have moved in any form to either a private, hosted private, or public cloud platforms. So why is that? Well, it's because building new cloud native apps and migrating existing virtual machines is much, much easier than refactoring existing core business applications to use cloud services. But that second wave of adoption around those enterprise apps is really where the next wave of true value is going to come. Right? That's where we really start seeing the direct effect on how we operate businesses, from product ideation all the way out to customer experience at the front end. So what we see at Forrester is 2019 is really the year that enterprises start modernizing their core with cloud platforms. So we reached out earlier this year with a study we did with Google. Actually, we started it in December of last year, but we actually didn't collect this data until the spring of 2018. So this is really fresh. And we decided to look at what's holding enterprises back and asked both infrastructure and operations teams and development teams what they're looking for. So infrastructure teams tell us, what do I need to get moving? I need to reduce my licensing costs for packaged software. So this is what's driving the incredible jump in open source tools and platforms in the cloud. Quite often, migration of a core enterprise app into a cloud platform for modernization comes with migrating its database platform to an open source or new database structure, migrating its virtualization environment to an open source or cloud native virtualization platform. And we just see consistent growth and in interest and adoption of open source platforms because of that. They need easier patching and updating. They still have to run this stuff. Simpler integration. And this is where API management platforms come in. They're all over the place. Right? And it's really important to set an API strategy as a foundational building block for your core enterprise application transformation. And overall, what they just need is much more flexibility in the infrastructure they run, whether they run it on premises or in the cloud. And this is why you see the incredible growth in containers and serverless platforms. They're a big part of that portability answer to let companies make more flexible decisions about infrastructure much closer to runtime than we've made it in the past. In the past, where we've generally specified hardware and then fit our applications into what we've got. If we look at the development side, Developers, of course, tell us it's someone else's problem, like developers always do, right? Their biggest problem is that they don't have operations teams that think like developers, that use infrastructure as code and will manage cloud platforms for them. This is really saying that I need an IT infrastructure and operations team that thinks cloud, thinks automation, and thinks flexibility and portability. But they actually also admit that they have a lack of skills. They just don't have enough expertise yet with especially not only the emerging platform skills like containers and Kubernetes and APIs and open source and serverless platforms, but they also don't have the skills in rapid software development and DevOps skills and automation. We recommend clients to really consider an immersive training experience. Pick up with your dev and ops team, identify a core cloud transformation team and get them out of their daily lives somewhere for a week or two where they can learn to build software natively on cloud platforms. They actually need much better security and compliance tools, and this is really important as enterprises start transforming because you can't do a lot of significant enterprise transformation if you don't take security into account up front. Developers are typically not security experts, but they need to know enough about security in today's development environment to have a better conversation with internal compliance teams and also with the security teams in the public cloud platforms. It's one thing to believe the cloud might be a little bit more secure than your data center, and it probably is. It's another thing to explain that to your internal compliance teams and your external regulators. So what's good news here is that government, financial services, and insurance companies, followed quickly by healthcare, the four most compliance-sensitive industries out there, are radically accelerating cloud adoption over the past 2 years, and we see that continuing for the next 2. So someone's getting out there ahead of you and trying to solve some of these security problems or security challenges. And finally, what they really need is they need on-demand access to the most innovative development platforms. They don't want to shut themselves off from using serverless, containers, Kubernetes, machine learning, database, all of the new services being pioneered in public cloud, but now available almost everywhere. What they're really trying to start doing is paying down the technical debt of all the aging legacy business applications that kill speed. Next slide. The other thing that's shifting in the past year and a half or so is that we've gone from talking about enterprise path to cloud as sort of a linear one-road journey. First I'll move some VMs, right? And maybe I'll build a new mobile app after that and get some skills in the Google Cloud Platform or AWS or Azure. And then after that, I'll think about maybe migrating some data there. It's really not a one-lane road anymore. Think of cloud adoption now as multiple swim lanes going on at once. And the progress you make in each one of these swim lanes makes the next one easier. Most companies start on what we call this path one here, typically with some system of engagement, something that directly impacts and has a sort of day-to-day impact on how your customers interact with your company. Something that directly touches customers. So say you build a new mobile or web app in Google or AWS, or you experiment with your first IoT solution in Google Cloud. Or maybe the first thing you do is migrate a customer-facing .NET app on SQL Server to Azure. What happens after you do that initially? Well, the first thing that happens is you start collecting new data. Start collecting new data in new places. Could just be simple customer preference data, right? Hey, do customers even like this new app or new service? Are they buying it? That new cloud resident data immediately can kick off a second parallel path, right? Where you can take that cloud resident data and now feed analytics or customer data mining, right? Which then you feed back into the app or feed back into additional internal apps that you've never fed with new data before. Right? Or maybe you feed it into Azure Machine Learning or TensorFlow at Google Cloud. Right? The kicker is when I start using these new analytics and new insights I gain to start changing sales process. Right? So customers don't like this, they do like this. How can we push this back into our sales and CRM and financial systems? Right? To help changing actual systems of record, the core transactional systems that power the business. And they might all live in Salesforce. Right? Part of which runs on AWS. So we we keep collecting new cloud resident data that feeds and accelerates the transformation of business process, which is really the holy grail. When we can keep this flywheel going up the stack to start improving business process, we can really change the way our customers perceive how quickly we as a company can move. Next slide. So after this webinar, what should you do? Right? Immediately, to get ready for Cloud Go Time, we've got 5 quick steps at Forrester. Well, none of them are quick, but 5 things that are really important for every client to do, especially in the enterprise space in 2019. To really take advantage of Cloud Go Time, 5 steps. 1, run a strategic portfolio analysis. There's a lot of names for this. This should be updated at least twice a year, and ideally, you're able to update this quarterly. This is the high-level business process driven by apps. Start with your apps, not with your infrastructure. Your application needs and your application architectures, and especially your application behaviors, should now dictate what kind of infrastructure you need, and not the other way around. The important thing is to start using buckets, to bucket your applications into what needs to transform now, what needs to transform later when we can get some additional budget. And this is key, what we're not going to do. One of the most important parts of strategy that's always forgotten is to be very clear about what we're not going to do, what apps we're not going to touch, what apps we're not going to think about until next year, or in some cases, after the person doing the portfolio analysis has retired, right? Strategy must include what you're not going to do. If you score each app with a simple set of profile inputs, you can come up with a set of strong candidates, moderate candidates, and risky bets. Put the moderate candidates and the risky bets aside and focus only on the strong candidates to begin with. Remember, it's going to be about speed. Someone else in your industry is trying to get there faster than you are. So we need to really shift our focus to the most important apps that will affect a day-to-day customer experience of either an end customer of ours, a supplier, or maybe even an employee. Step 2, next slide. For each of those apps that are strong candidates, you need a specific modernization plan for that app. Right? For new applications, what's going to get us to minimum viable product fastest? There's a phrase going around Silicon Valley now that if your minimum viable product isn't crap, you're too late. Meaning it's now really all about speed and getting to market first, even with not your best effort, right? To stay in your customers' daily lives. Second, for existing apps, focus on trying to improve at least one dimension of customer experience. If you can't measure an improvement in customer experience for a cloud transformation and modernization project, don't do it, right? Just keep the app as it is. If you can move the app or its data to public cloud, and that gets you closer to cloud resident services, right, like cloud native databases or API platforms or messaging or IoT, all of the new emerging technologies coming in public cloud, then do it, right? What we call that lift and extend. Get it there and then start extending the app using cloud native services. But modernize something about the app during the move. If you can't move the app or its data, then you're going to need at least a partial rewrite. Whether it's an elastic front end or a database component, these are the projects that you now give to your focused Cloud Center of Excellence team. The rewrite, the lift and shift, and replacing components of those apps. Also, I didn't mention this in the last slide, but you should also have in your portfolio analysis which set of applications you think are good candidates to replace with SaaS, and you should be accelerating replacement of SaaS for any app that doesn't have budget or appetite for modernization. Next, step 3, speaking of which, before you build or buy any of these platforms, reorganize for cloud. Form a customer-obsessed cloud team. Really, this is structured around the principles of DevOps. There's nothing new here that hasn't been stated over the past 10 years in the principles of accelerated DevOps teams. The most important things are to create a product team for each application. That means breaking down, our traditional IT and development silos, where everyone on this team now thinks of themselves as responsible from beginning to end for the delivery of a product. Move from product management from project management to product management. We've all been through many, many projects where the database team thinks they're on track with their projects, right? The infrastructure team thinks they're on track. The development team thinks they're on track to get to first code, and the product itself is still late. That's often because too many people on the team are satisfied and rewarded when their projects deliver on time or successfully, and don't see the big picture around product. Product teams really all share the same information too. Right? They respond quickly as a team. They help keep everyone laser focused on customer experience. Product problems should not be divided into dev problems or ops problems. They are product team problems. And this is really often the most disruptive change, but it's really the most important because cloud transformation is as much, if not more, about culture change than it's about any new cloud platform, right? Or any new infrastructure platform or doing a database migration. If you don't set up culture change first, then you're missing out on the chance to learn a new way to build and update apps. Because in the future, as we said, over time, your application portfolio is going to be much more composed of services than they're going to be monolithic code stacks. And composing new apps out of services is a new skill for all of us to learn. Step 4 on the next slide, pursue relentless automation. Our research shows that enterprises aren't nearly as automated as they need to be, and there's really no successful cloud strategy without a radical commitment to automation. We call this our fake news slide. Right? Even in companies that consider themselves really strongly committed to DevOps, and that's who we polled here, companies who believe they are mature in DevOps automation, only a little more than half of their application release and IT management tasks are really fully automated at this point. And even worse, the data shows that executives on their teams think they're much more automated than they are, sometimes by more than a 10% gap. So we're convincing our management we're a little more automated than we are in a lot of cases. If you're a developer or in IT operations, you really need to start identifying and flagging to management where manual processes are slowing you down. Right? Let your management know. Don't assume management understands which manual processes are slowing down release. If you're a development leader, right, or you're a technology manager, start today to start rewarding people who automate. Help your team move away from firefighter and superhero mode, right, where we celebrate the people that came in over the weekend and solved a problem. Yes, absolutely, they should be celebrated. They came in and fixed a problem, but we need to start celebrating the people that automated the problem out in the first place, or that spent time in advance making sure that we could automate out a problem and we didn't have to become heroes. A really important thing to take away here is don't forget security automation. That's not even listed on here, but it's becoming one of the most important parts of automation, especially during cloud transformation. Even in the most advanced DevOps companies I talk to, security remains the biggest barrier to full automation. Right? If you can deploy a new release in minutes, but you have to wait a week or longer for a security review before production deployment, you're going to run into a speed wall. And when people tell us we can't act like Google in our data center, what they really mean is we have so many gates to production that are required by security. And what they're actually saying is the security team is really not part of our DevOps team. So think about aligning those two things so you can start breaking down the security gates. If it right now takes you a 6-week process to get the correct approvals to deploy a new data structure or a new app in production, then start hammering away at that now. And security automation is hard, so it'll take time. And the 5th step, don't do this yourself. Re-engage with your trusted providers and make some new friends. We're now well into the cloud era, so the kind of partners like Agosto that are out there in the market probably have 5 or 6 years of experience more than your team in doing these transformations. It's not like they're learning cloud at the same time you are anymore. So it's really time to re-engage with people you might not have talked to for a while to help you here. You probably shouldn't do this alone, because cloud can seem threatening, exciting, and risky all at the same time. Right? Partners can really help you overcome internal organizational resistance. And at the same time, they help you navigate all of the hundreds of new cloud platforms and services that are going to be released just this year at a couple major conferences. I would look for a partner that understands infrastructure and application and development processes. And really look for one that's committed to innovation, right? That's making the investments required to understand new CI/CD tooling, new open source platforms, and new self-service dev platforms that are on the way. And look for a partner that can help you start adding, especially machine learning, cognitive, AI, and IoT to your cloud toolkit. That's where you're really going to get your bang for the buck in the cloud. So I'll summarize in the next 2 slides. Key takeaways after this slide. First, the cloud economy is really disrupting core business models. What that means, if you really want the nut of digital transformation, you need to learn to adapt a lot more quickly. That doesn't just mean getting your first product out the door faster, even if it's crap. It means being able to say, this isn't working, we're killing it very quickly and starting something new. That's a huge culture shift for a lot of organizations used to 12-month to 18-month IT innovation cycles. The right sourcing exercise or strategic portfolio analysis, we have plenty of names for it, that really determines cloud success. Taking stuff off the plate so you can focus on something really critical to the business, even if it's only 1 or 2 app transformations to begin with. Keep tearing down those silos. We've been, of course, yelling at IT organizations to break down silos for 15 years. But now we actually have a strategy for how to do it. And that means taking people out of their comfort zones and their day-to-day lives and making them part of a new cloud innovation team, whether that's just a temporary secondment or it's a full reorg, really depends on how much you think your business is being disrupted from the outside, how much change you need to make immediately. Constantly reward people who automate over people who want to continue to administer. The future is not system administration. The future is infrastructure engineering. And the future is all admin and infrastructure teams starting to think like developers. We have to code our infrastructure the same way we code our services. And like I said at the beginning, you're going to have to orchestrate the cloud. No one's going to run this for you long term. And that means becoming a hybrid cloud by design, not letting it happen to you because you hired a consultant that brought in a particular cloud platform and now you're stuck with one. It's still the enterprise IT responsibility to chart the path forward and make sure that you're designing hybrid. And my final slide, we publish every couple of years an update to the most emerging and disruptive technologies on the way. These are the 12 technologies we think are the most important to watch through 2020. And I circled a few key ones that are interesting to look at, not that doesn't apply to the other ones, but deep learning, machine learning, cognitive and AI, distributed ledger with blockchain and strong connectivity. Edge computing is in there as well, and serverless. All of these are being pioneered in the public cloud. But enterprises want them on premises as well. This is what's really going to drive product strategies at the major cloud providers for the next couple of years. This is a consistent trend, and it's going to drive the next phase of cloud innovation. They'll prove it in the public cloud, they'll pilot it in the public cloud, and then leading enterprise vendors are going to find a way to make it work across a mix of public and private cloud platforms. So the good news is, at this point in cloud, you're not the first company in your industry to do something using a distributed public cloud platform, but you don't have to be the last either. And with that, thank you for your time. Back over to you, Rick.
Great, thank you so much, Dave. That was really interesting. I think that there's a lot of great takeaways from Dave's content. And please feel free to reach out to Dave at Twitter if you have any kind of broad questions or broad thoughts. I think he'd love to hear from the audience. And if you have questions for Dave in particular for today, please feel free to add those to our Q&A section. Again, up in the frame, you should have a Q&A box you can click. So why don't we go ahead and pivot now to an organization, Zebra Technologies, who has been in the process of going through their own cloud adoption journey, following many of the similar themes that we've heard from Dave just a few minutes ago. And I want to introduce everyone to Nathan Clevenger, Director of Software R&D at Zebra. Nathan is Director of Portfolio in the Enterprise Software Business Unit at Zebra Technologies, where he leads the roadmap for the Savannah data services platform. He was previously CTO at iFactor, which was acquired by Zebra in 2015. I've had the pleasure to work with Dave recently, and I'm sure Dave would tell you that a lot of what I'm sorry, excuse me, I had the pleasure of working with Nathan. I'm sure Nathan would tell you that he sees a lot of similar themes that Dave was referring to during his talk, that he will find both part of their journey and also things that he's been thinking about as he's knowing Zebra, knowing Nathan, have a very customer obsessed organizational approach to how they develop products and how they are transforming their organization. So with that, Dave or Nathan, I'll let you take it away and walk us through a little bit about your own journey at Zebra.
Perfect. Thanks, Rick. So I'll start off by giving a little background on who Zebra is and a little overview of our cloud journey, and then hopefully we can have a little bit of an interactive discussion. But Zebra is a brand that you might not be familiar with, but you probably interact with our products on a daily basis. When you go into a grocery store, for example, the workers scanning items on the shelf are probably using our barcode scanners and mobile computers. When you purchase the products at checkout, you're probably being scanned with one of our barcode scanners. When you order a product from e-commerce that's delivered to your home, the label that the package, the shipping label that's on the package was probably printed on one of our printers. It's probably scanned by one of our scanners, and you sign the screen on one of our mobile computers from the delivery worker who's delivering the package to your organization. And so, we're an interesting company in the sense that we, again, are all over the place, but we might not have that brand recognition. If you go to the next slide, you'll see that we're also, a key market leader in our core focuses. So for rugged mobile computing, we have currently around 65% market share in rugged Android mobile computers. So we're very close partners with Google on that. Data capture, barcode printing, mobile RFID, we're also leaders. And around indoor location services, we're a leader in that market as well. If you go to the next slide, just some high-level stats on Zebra. We're about $4 billion in sales, 7,000 employees, offices around the world, and we invest very heavily in R&D and intellectual property because we know that our customers depend on our innovation to give them a performance edge in their business. And so if you go to the next slide, the way that we see the world and our customers take advantage of us is historically a lot of digital innovation has been around the core of the enterprise. Systems at a data center managed by IT, things like ERP, CRM, warehouse management, or electronic medical records, for example. But where we see a really significant opportunity for innovation, if you go to the next slide, is what we call the edge, which we define as where businesses and their people and products meet their customers and get work done. And so we have a variety of products that go beyond that system of record and provide a system of reality. So in addition to our I'll say our core portfolio products like scanners and mobile computers and printers, we also have a portfolio of intelligent edge sensing solutions, like, for example, Swimlanes, which in a retail environment uses video, uses RFID, ultrasonic microlocationing, and Wi-Fi to track all of the products in a retail environment, track people, their devices, and associate which products are in the cart of which guest or customer. And another example is our Smart Pack solution, which uses machine vision in trailers help transportation and logistics companies with the efficiency of packing their trailers and containers very efficiently and effectively. If you go to the next slide, you'll see another great case study. When you watch the NFL and the upcoming Super Bowl, all of the location stats provided with next gen stats from the NFL are actually powered by Zebra. We're the official on-field player tracking solution provider for the NFL. So every player in the NFL has 2 RFID tags, one under each shoulder pad, and there's also a tag in the game ball. And the tags also have sensors, including accelerometers and gyroscopes to measure motion on the tags themselves, and are being sent back to our systems every 50 milliseconds. So a very real-time, highly accurate system. But if you go to the next slide, as in my role particularly, I run the Savannah data platform, and what we are looking to do now that our customers have these collection of what previously were I'll say disparate devices on the edge. For about 3 years now, all of the devices that we've shipped have come out of the box with a connection back to our Savannah cloud. And initially, that's anonymous machine data around the health of the device, the battery charge cycles, and et cetera, to give basic analytics around the health of the device. But what we continually heard from our customers is, as they're going through their digital transformations, their cloud journey, they wanted to know what else we could do. So rather than just thinking about our devices as data capture and data sensing devices on the edge, now that we have this connection to the cloud, we saw an opportunity to give our customers essentially cloud APIs for all of our core portfolio. So developers have been using Zebra APIs and SDKs for decades, but on our current developer site, historically, 50,000 pages of documentation were all around device level APIs. And so now we're in the process of going through and creating cloud APIs for all of these types of things. So for example, if I'm a hospital and I scan a recalled pharmaceutical or medical device, being able to detect that recalled notification in the cloud without having to modify your legacy on-prem systems, or in a traceability world where we're seeing every month another recall of romaine lettuce around E. coli, and where blockchain can provide that accountability to the manufacturers, the producers, the distributors across the supply chain. We hear our customers saying that it's very expensive, for example, to interact and interface with the blockchain. But because our printers and our scanners and our RFID readers are connected to the cloud, when they print a label of that product, because that connection is to the cloud, we can give our customers the opportunity to automatically connect that transaction and record it on a hyperledger on their behalf, and so provide sort of that out-of-the-box traceability. So those are the types of things that our customers are asking for, and this journey from edge devices to now cloud-connected devices, and having a portfolio of APIs in a cloud paradigm has been a very big transition for our organization.
That's perfect, Nathan. Thank you for that overview. I'm continually fascinated by how forward-thinking Zebra is in this space. Doing some very interesting things with taking Savannah to kind of the next level, and really thinking again about the voice of their customer first. It's been, again, I think it sort of lines up with a lot of what Dave was saying earlier about how organizationally you need to be sort of customer obsessed as you think about developing and performing and adding new features and new services that are going to be supportive of that voice. So really interesting. Thanks for that. What I'd like to do now is pivot to our Q&A section. And I have a few questions that have already popped up. I have one that's an interesting question because I think it both hits some things that Zebra has been contending with a bit, and it also is probably, even for follow-up, something that Dave at Forrester would comment on. So one attendee asked for, what factors are differentiating API management platforms in the market? I think there's kind of a patented answer for that, which is more about sort of looking at the platforms and doing a bake-off between them. And Dave at Forrester can help with that because they publish quite a few reports if you want to hit him up. But I would ask maybe this a little bit differently to Nathan. Nate, I know you and Zebra went through this process when you were considering platforms. Can you share a little bit about what are the things you were looking for in API management and how that's impacted Zebra?
Yeah, absolutely. In a lot of ways, API management, I don't want to say is a commodity, but there are quite a few platforms that provide the basic capabilities and functionality of API management. But for us, we selected Google and the Apogee API management platform based on two really key differentiators. The first differentiator was the monetization capability. And so Apogee has actually a very rich monetization engine that allows us to structure monetization models for almost any type of structure that you could imagine. And so it gives our product managers across our different business units the flexibility to define the ways that they want to monetize their data and their APIs. So that was the first differentiator. The second differentiator is that Apogee has actually something called an Edge Micro Gateway, which is something that lives in a Docker microservice, and it is essentially an on-prem cloud managed API management platform. So in our customers, where we have retail environments with potentially dozens of on-prem systems, this gives us the ability to manage all of those APIs on-prem in that retail environment, as well as a lot of those types of environments, the devices don't have access to the public internet. And so that proxy also provides cloud access by giving that customer the ability to only give one device on the network access to the internet, as opposed to giving every device. And so those two things, being able to have on-prem managed API management, and then as well, see the analytics, and because monetization is based on the analytics, we can even monetize on-prem consumption through Apogee. Those were the key factors, which is why we selected Google.
Cool. Dave, do you have any comments on that?
No, nothing to add to that, except that certainly Forrester does evaluate these platforms regularly. We have a whole stream of research around API management, including a very recent wave on those solutions. Google was absolutely a leader in that wave with about 4 other primary vendors. But I think that it's really key to look at portal for API users as well, and overall user engagement with the API. It's interesting, as you were talking about that, I was checking the criteria, and monetization is built into ecosystems and commercial models, which we looked at as well, and that was weighted relatively low, and in this historically, and in the past couple of years, we've weighted that much higher in the evaluation because of the people needing these commercial and monetization models. Makes a lot of sense.
It does, and we're seeing that too. I mean, just in terms of partner activity here, more and more of our customers are fitting into that world of we need to better manage and understand how we're going to, if we're going to surface and spend our effort in facilitating and providing these APIs. How do we manage it in a way that's going to support our own internal models and then in the bill back cycles, right? So how does that happen?
Right.
So those are all really critical things that I think are really interesting and valuable.
Well, and like Nate mentioned as well, it's when people say I have a hard time thinking like a cloud platform. Yes, I'd love to run my business like Google or something like that. Well, one of the things you can do to start thinking like a cloud platform is you don't write any code, and you can't release any new code or microservice without a published API, period. Right? So there's no more code being released into the enterprise that other applications can't talk to until we get around to it.
Right. Okay. Well, so let's pivot to another question. Here's another one that came up. So knowing that Zebra likely has some technical debt from legacy systems and acquisition, how is Zebra thinking about its path to modernize these applications as "quote unquote" cloud native?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think one of our core realizations was initially we spent a lot of time and energy trying to make sure that everything we did was cloud agnostic. But what we realized through that is that when we did that, we were not able to take advantage of all of the millions of man hours that are being invested annually in these platform as a service capabilities, and the agility and speed to market that we could achieve by leveraging those PaaS services greatly outweighed the potential future switching cost, because the ability to even innovate even further in the future, it's all just continuing to accelerate. And so it was that sort of mind shift that led us to, in several cases, walk away from some pretty significant historical investments and just replace them with modern alternatives.
Yeah, and I think that's a good pivot too, because I think one of the other questions that's come up is this question about when you're making these investments in cloud native, how does that accelerate your ability to be innovative? And so I think Dave touched on this as well, but this sort of commitment towards DevOps, right? And so one of the other questions here is, and I'll just kind of rephrase this, but how has Zebra managed or developed CI/CD pipelines into their public cloud journey? And I think it's a good you kind of illustrated that a minute ago, but do you have anything else you want to mention specifically about how security kind of gets weaved into that?
Yeah. So we knew that DevSecOps, and we're very intentional about calling it DevSecOps, including security into that process, for all the reasons that Dave mentioned. But due to our close relationship with Google, we actually had the opportunity to have some Google folks present to some senior leaders at Zebra to actually explain, how could we, innovate at sort of that speed, going from, idea to data service in days or weeks. And one of the questions that our one of our senior leaders asked was, how is that possible when the governance processes, and security reviews, again, as Dave mentioned, could take, weeks or months, in and of themselves. And the simple and straightforward answer is that you automate all of those. And what you do is you can build candidate security profiles for certain APIs and certain applications, and you take those reference architectures or those candidates through the governance and process. And then when you have a specific API, for example, much of that can be extremely automated. And that's how you get that speed. And so the shift in our minds at Zebra, I think, is less about just thinking of it, continuous integration and continuous deployment, and much more about how to automate governance.
Yeah, I think that's great.
That's the key. I had a client tell me once that the security team told them, if I'm doing my job, you're not doing your job, right? And that has to change, right? Meaning that security has to be, and we've done security in the past primarily by slowing things down, right? And that's a valid approach, right? To enforcing security, is to slow things down as much as possible until this is ready to go. But that's really antithetical and sort of the last part of the business that has sort of gotten the automation message, because there's this feeling that things are changing so quickly that security profiles and governance processes can't be automated. But we used to think the same thing about server provisioning.
Yeah, I want to pivot just to a little bit of a different subject, but something else that Dave touched on. But back to you, Nate. How has Zebra trained its development and dev, operational and security teams to have confidence and deployment capabilities in public cloud tech stacks?
I think it's a lot of just doing it. Training, investing in resources, but then just making the decision to do it and tell the teams you're going to do it, and bring in key partners to help augment our teams. And so there are experts side by side, some other team members that might not have done it before. But I think the key thing is you just have to make the decision, and the decision has to come from the top down. Otherwise, you get the constant waffling, and it doesn't happen.
Yeah, and I think just an observation that we've seen is that cloud is sort of like VMware was 15 years ago, where it was kind of a new shiny kind of cool object. And there's lots of people that found interest in maybe investing some personal time and developing their own level of experience with wanting to play around with it. But to be deliberate about it, you really need to make a cultural commitment internally to enable your teams to one, understand what the end goal is, right? So part of that is committing to microservices, as Dave mentioned in his discussion, and how that sort of approach, it allows you to be more agile, right? And attack problems as you get your maturity down for how do you manage pipelining and these components that are typically blocks in the company. Now you begin to create enablement paths that really accelerate your journey. So I like that sort of cohesion, and we've seen that over and over again. I think the more that you have sort of a deliberate process and approach, and then use partners a little bit more like a launch vehicle to help you have some success, and then begin to start developing those capabilities internally. And you can farm out things that you like, hey, we're just never going to do this. But I think it's important, especially for companies that have a commitment towards technology innovation, that they take the path and internally that they're going to eventually have these competencies in-house, right? And I'm saying that from a partner that's done it with hundreds of companies throughout the last few years. But that's one message that I take away, and I think Dave, you also articulated that.
Right. Absolutely.
So I think we're going to wrap up here because we're just at the hour. But I just wanted to add a couple other things. First off, thank you so much, Dave. Thank you so much, Nate. I've got literally like 20 other questions we could go through, but I think we covered things that I thought were really valuable. I hope the rest of the audience felt that way. I've laid out just a little bit about us here. So for those of you that do want to talk to us, I'm happy to talk with any of you. In my role, my job is really to help you think about past innovation and align those innovation paths with proven strategies to have success when you do deploy, when you do develop, when you do implement internal collaboration, other tooling. So happy to talk with any of you on an individual basis, and you can reach out to folks at our sales team to help coordinate that. And then I just left you with a few things to think about in terms of these are sort of approaches that we have that fit into a lot of what Dave mentioned, patterns of evaluating, assessing, prioritizing those areas, those applications, and those services that you have internally that have the highest value and lowest risk to the organization. Again, we have approaches that are ways that you can do this from a scope perspective, but also ways that we can engage and help you solve some of these problems together. So without further ado, I'm going to wrap things up. Thanks so much again. I appreciate all of your participation, and look forward to hopefully talking to you all in 2019.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.